Ni hao, Nyang. Hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I will put a link to it up in the corner for you over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, then come back here to find out what happened next. We are now in session 56, and this one was so good, so here we go. Okay, so excited, because they decided to go see the hag. So there was some prep, sort of, and some preface before they decided to go see the hag. Well, they kind of had decided to go see it, but they had sort of the rest of the afternoon and the night and the morning to kind of prepare anything, talk to anybody, and then they were going to go teleport there via the skull that Keith and Ilias had presented to them. So Basil sends a few messages to Asmodeum, mentioning that they're about to go and talk to Babasindra and that there might be deals involved, possibly about like the entity in his ring, to which Asmodeum kind of reiterates the urgency that they have a conversation. So Basil sort of gives him a deadline a bit for a meeting date to meet them at the Reed and Post Inn in 2 days. Asmodeum kind of has to go take care of a few things first, so the deadline might be a little bit tight, but we'll see how that goes. So I had talked to Basil a little bit kind of before the session, and with Criella's like offer to him and his like her manifestation, that is a pretty like good segue or possible transition into like a warlock multi-class. It would be great old one, because you know she's spooky, does a lot with like mental afflictions and whispery voices and such. So that is entirely possible for him to do. So I think he's a bit torn between the price of that sort of a pact or not following what Criella wants and what that could mean for him or for the party, versus the price that Babasindra would ask for. So that'll be dealt with in more detail later. Both Umric and Valhyri, actually, after they prepare their spells for the next day, they both cast divination, interestingly enough. So Umric asks his deity, who is Eremsia, the goddess of death, and he asks her whether or not they should be helping free Criella from her imprisonment, to which he receives I decided not to be terribly cryptic about it, partly because like these answers I think were pretty like easy to give, and Wistria is not the only goddess with like influence in this material plane, so I don't think it would make sense to necessarily give them like a very vague or like a vague signal or like something like that. So I decided to just answer the questions, not improv practiced enough to come up with things in verse. So to that question, Eremsia answers that Criellowist is a dangerous entity, and nothing good can come from her freedom. Pretty definitive answer. From Valhyri, she asks, her goddess is Melispa, the goddess of wild nature, and she kind of like has a short conversation that she's been kind of gone for quite some time, since she kind of passed through the veil and came back, and she doesn't quite know what to do about the forest. And so she sort of asks whether Babasindra can help with that. To which Melispa replies that Babasindra herself could not restore the whole or heal the whole forest herself, she most likely has the knowledge to, but that there would still be a price to pay for that information, and sort of it's kind of up to her if it's worth it or not. But kind of, I think I'll NPCs or like guidance related clues about Babasundra that I've given them has been do not take a deal. Whereas me as the DM, I'm like, make a deal, please. It'd be so cool. But yeah, in general, hags not a great give and take with them. So after that, they kind of share a bit of their results and then take the skull and teleport their way to Babasundra's grove. So here they're teleported back into the snow and the cold, in this like grove of trees where Kathan is waiting for them, kind of not surprised, but more just like, oh, you're earlier than I expected. This whole time he's been very deadpan, very emotionless, and I think the characters have kind of picked up a bit that he's very different than he used to be. But he leads them through this grove of trees to an area that is actually clear of ice and snow. I actually made like a concept art map kind of it. So it's a hut that's sitting on top of a large kind of tree stump. These a few like gnarled trees growing sporadically nearby in the space, but it's just like a circular area, maybe 120 feet or so in diameter, where it seems that the snow and ice just has not collected, and it's actually snowing outside, so it's for somehow the snow does not seem to fall in this area. And then there is like a little fenced off patch kind of in the back of Babasundra's hut that seems to be growing some sort of like weird red tendrily plant or vines that they don't really know what it's used for. So Babasundra, who I very much like based her off of Isharnai from Critical Role. So she is like a very tall figure, standing at about like 7-ish feet, 7-ish feet, with like a heavy hunch to the back. She's carrying a long kind of wooden knotted and gnarled staff. She has like overlong arms that are double jointed, overlong fingers that seem to also have an extra joint with long hooked nails, grayish skin, kind of what were once like kind of elven features maybe, but now are kind of sagging and wrinkled, and like lots of, and a smile that's kind of full of sharp but like blackened rotted teeth, and piercing like yellow-green, like acidic kind of eyes. And she was so much fun to roleplay. Fairnay, I think, has been my favorite NPC to date, but playing Babasundra has been so fun. I think I really got like the voice and like the atmosphere of it down, and I was just really pleased with how it came out. So Babasundra basically welcomes them and says, "So you accepted my invitation. I'm glad that we could meet face to face. I wanted to get a closer look at those who so blatantly go against the desires of our mad lady. So, I'm nothing if not loyal to her, so I invited you here. See if I could offer my services. Why don't we speak inside? One at a time, if you please." Like that. So she heads inside and they quickly discuss on who's going to go first and whether or not they can possibly trick her into offering more information. Kren is the first, since he is quite urgent about his desire, and it's so much fun to play her. Basically, he very insistently asks if she can actually perform miracles and kind of do what she promises, and he wants the return of his deceased wife. So his within his backstory, he had a wife who ended up being killed, and he's trying to bring her back. So to this, like, Wistria sorry, not wishing into this, Babasundra says that yes, she can do that, and she actually has done so for a different Empressor. But then asks like what he's willing to offer and give up. And much like a Shana of Critical Role, she is sort of looking for things that would cause misery, things that would eventually break somebody's mind, because that is kind of what she feeds off of, what nourishes her is that misery and that despair, and then that slow kind of descent into madness. So he offers his like great axe, which he kind of came up with a little backstory for, that was like forged by the dwarves and was valuable, but she's less interested in these kinds of material possessions. So when she says like that's not an equal trade, that's not really what she's looking for, he then comes up with offering her his memories of his wife, which is an interesting idea. Babasundra kind of waves a hand, and as he's visualizing his wife, her face sort of begins to blur a little bit as if he's forgetting her. And she says that if he were to forget, he would have lost like the reason that he's here in the first place, that for wanting to bring her back. So instead, what she puts on the table is that she can bring back his wife if he agrees that they can essentially never be reunited. So like they will both live on with their memories of each other, but he can never go to see her, he can never actually be with her, and she will be kind of with her memories like waiting for him to come home, but he never will. It's some of my players mentioned it turned very K-drama-esque, which I am so here for. But with that, she also says that this is a complicated bit of magic, is bringing people back from the dead, especially with no body, always is, and that she will require his help with the ritual, to which he agrees, just like that. His help and the party's help, actually, no questions asked. So I have some interesting things planned for what he has to do in order to get this ritual to work. And I mean, there's not really a loophole, I don't think, because he agreed to it, and she's gonna ask some pretty heavy tasks to be done, so that will be interesting. But then, favorite part, she puts out her hand with her long fingers. Have we a deal? He shakes it. The deal is struck. That's one hag deal, which I'm very excited of. One thing with Kren's character, since it was made kind of to fit into kind of the current storyline, I did feel a bit bad about like feeling a bit like I kind of railroaded his character, but at the same time, like in my mind at least, I was leaving it up to him if he actually wanted to take this deal from the witch, from Babasundra. And the way he played it was that he was desperate and would do anything. So I think it worked out. So next up, I believe, was Basil. Basil had a very short conversation. Babasundra basically mentioned that she could tell that there are many shadows hanging over his soul, and that she could help to purge him of Kriella's influence, but for a price. Some of the prices mentioned were, I think, his connection with Avar. The negotiations didn't go terribly far before Basil decided to leave, maybe discuss with his party members more. There was one thing that I thought of, but not in time, before Basil kind of like hurried out, was that she would give him a tincture, some sort of a potion that he would have to get Asmodeum to drink. So maybe that will come up again. Let's see, afterwards, I believe Avar went in. Avar was a little bit unclear as to what he was asking. He seemed to want he wanted like a closer connection with his god, which is Urkaden, the god of like magic and knowledge. / he wanted to be sort of free maybe from the sort of magical restraints of his kind. But then he like offered a closer connection to Urkaden to Babasundra, which didn't really make sense to me. So what Babasundra basically offered was that she could like untether him from the magic and the wills of others, basically. So since he's a Warforged, he has to sort of have a connection to a magic user that kind of keeps him sentient and working and affords him some of his own magical power. So she kind of offered to break that, potentially turn him into flesh and bone, or to kind of break that tie so that he would be 100% autonomous in exchange for potentially Basil is the one who is currently tied to him, so the one who's currently tied to him in exchange for untying him from that person. But Ivar declined, and then next up came Teyral. Teyral, I think he was kind of testing the waters. He mentioned that he wanted strength, he wanted to power so that even the gods wouldn't be able to touch him, which is a difficult thing to ask, or to give also. He didn't offer much except for like what he had on him. And so Babasundra kind of gave him an offer similar to Cathan, that she could grant him this strength and prowess, although not guaranteed to equal that of the gods, but in exchange for him, for kind of his servitude for a rather indeterminate amount of time before she kind of deemed the quota sort of that he would have to meet kind of fulfilled, which he very quickly declined as well. And then lastly, because Umric did not deign to go in and talk to Babasundra, lastly was Valhyrie, who I knew like probably wanted to know about the forest given her divination, but she talked a little bit about kind of the orbs and their journey, but then switched to the forest and how to save her home. To which Babasundra replies that she does indeed have the knowledge of how it could be done, but she herself obviously can't do it, and that for the deal, like, no guarantees that Valhyrie would be able to perform these tasks and actually save the home. Valhyrie says that like she has some information maybe to trade, and that's kind of on the table for a little bit, but like as DM, I wasn't entirely clear on what that information was and if Babasundra was interested in it or if it was worth it. So they kind of circled a little bit before it seemed that Babasundra probably either already knew or kind of it wasn't quite an equal trade in terms of like magnitude of information. So then what Valhyrie offers, and what I really like about this is that she came up with the offer herself and didn't have Babasundra state something, or more like me state something as the DM, because I think I can dig into their characters a little bit more than they can. But she offered the corruption inside of her. So basically, she offered for that to be exacerbated and also like tied to Babasundra in exchange for the information. Into which Babasundra is quite interested and warns her that if she should one day be able to cleanse her family, her home, her forest of this rot that has been afflicting it, she would be the one exception to it, since this corruption is now tied to Babasundra and her magic. So she would be kind of the only one to suffer from it, and it might like shorten her life expectancy quite a bit, etc. Valkyrie said she understood, and for the second time, a deal is made with Baba Sindra. So I got 2 hag packs, and I'm so excited. And this is, I think, a really cool thing for Valkyrie too, because now I can progress her affliction a little bit and kind of think of some new mechanics that are going to start affecting her as like they continue to level and continue to grow and such. But it's really exciting. So with that, we kind of left off with Baba Sindra making preparations as to the 2 rituals that she now has to perform. Well, the one ritual to bring back Kren's wife, and the other is more of the brewing of a certain potion that will tie her to Valkyrie's inner corruption and rot. So they are going to camp out maybe, but she's also going to send them off somewhere to do something terrible, and we'll see how they feel about it. But that is session 56. I'm so excited. Hags are so fun. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!